Good evening, it is 7:30. Thank you very much. Good evening, it's 7:30 on October 10th, 2017, special board meeting for the Vernon Hills Park Board of Commissioners.
Okay, you on time.
You're right there. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Mullane.
I'm here.
Commissioner Baloo.
Present.
Commissioner Robbins. Commissioner Kessler.
Here.
President Dorhofer.
Here, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, the first item and only item on the agenda for this evening is the Hawthorne School District 73 kindergarten presentation. If I would like to welcome James Lemke to the podium. Or Jason, I'm sorry. Jason Lemke to the podium to present the proposed design.
Thank you very
You're
much.
good to go.
We appreciate your time and attention this evening. We're happy to
That's right.
present the proposed kindergarten addition to this facility. We have a few slides tonight. We're happy to take questions as you have them, either along the way or at the end. That's entirely up to you. Unless there are any initial questions, we'll begin.
Please.
This first image depicts the aerial configuration of the addition juxtaposed to the existing Sullivan Center. You can see how the existing Sullivan Center has oriented itself along Aspen Drive at an angle of approximately 45 degrees or so, related to Compass North. The addition is proposed to situate itself north of the existing building, but at Compass East-West. The primary reason for doing that is the relationship, well, several reasons. The relationship of the facility to the property line is one. The orientation of the facility affords maximum control of daylight for the classrooms. Daylight will be primarily gathered through north and south windows in the facility. The east and west sides of the facility are harder to control natural light, and when we're in a classroom environment, we want to make sure that that is such that the teachers and students can facilitate utilization of technology and other individual tasks without having to be encumbered by glare coming in through one of those eastern western exposures depending upon the time of day. We have a very compact two-story design. The area to the south, and I'm not sure, is there a laser? There is. Will it work on the television? It won't.
Doesn't work on the television.
Use
Okay.
your cursor.
Excellent suggestion.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
You've done this before.
We've done this before. So this area here that I'm circling with the hand is a story and a half area of the building. The administration is on the east. The main entry of the building is situated in this location with a link to the existing gymnasium for shared utilization. There's a multi-purpose space off to its west, and then two-story classroom areas which have been nicknamed the Petals, and we'll talk about that as we get into the design, as well as the potential for a future two-story addition to be added on in this location, such that a complete construction picture, should it be necessary, would have 3 two-story classroom petals along the north end. The existing library parking lot is shown here to the north and west. We are showing a sidewalk extension coming from the existing parking lot structure into the existing building through this link entry, and we'll show more about that in a minute. We envision that there would be a landscape path or a wood chip path that would go through the remaining trees of the wetland area. It is the district's plan to purchase wetland credits for the entire wetland area. However, we'd like to preserve as much green space as we can. We recognize there's some scrub that needs to be cleared out, but we'd like to be able to preserve that green space as possible for the community and provide a connection from Aspen Drive even through and then back out to the other side. The existing middle south exit is here. Your service drive is just off of set of that. There's a minor modification that will need to be made to that service drive. Currently, there's a turnaround to the north and east. We'll need to flip that to the south and west in order to facilitate the addition and its proximity to your service. We envision that the school district will utilize this service path for warm lunch delivery through carts that will then be facilitated into the multipurpose room where the students will eat. So that delivery time will occur as necessary for when the lunch schedule is determined. And they'll be brought in carts, they'll be wheeled in. This is something that is common practice in the district today at a few of their facilities, such that it shouldn't be any great complication. You can see a tabulation of the spaces provided on the right-hand side of the screen, starting with at the top, what the Educational Master Facility Plan, that's the EFMP, had allowed for. So you can see the tabulation of classrooms and administration space and a multipurpose room. And then through this design, we've been able to maximize the value and provide the additional spaces listed below, including some maker spaces, some additional art studio space, pull-out space, those sorts of things to facilitate a very flexible and fluid environment for the students and teachers. You can see below that a tabular quantification of the net areas of the various components of the building, not the gross area, but the net area, and then what might be included in the future addition listed on the bottom. Taking a step inside before we take a tour of the exterior of the building, this color-coded plan indicates the utilization of the building. I want to talk first about the entry sequence because these doors would be the primary entrance for the building. We have multiple layers of security provided for both the Park District as well as the school district. So patrons would enter through these doors, through a secure set of doors, and then on the north side where the school addition is, there would be another secure set of doors for that entry sequence to work, where visitors would come into the reception area and then into the multipurpose space. On the other side of the link, just off the screen, is your egress doors from the new gymnasium space. We've connected to those for convenience both ways, both for the school district and for the Park District. But it is such that we anticipate being able to secure that entrance as well with key card access. That's certainly something that we can discuss further, but it's our anticipation that this vestibule, if you will, this link between the two would be your opportunity to either go into the school or into the gym. Now, for the students and their shared utilization of that gym space during the day, we'd be able to facilitate that directly through this link. The multipurpose room is situated in this blue area. The gray areas are core or service areas, so you see things like toileting. This is where the warming carts would be brought in for food, such that they could facilitate lunch occurring. Out here in between the two facilities, the existing facility and the proposed facility, would be a play area. So we anticipate some playground equipment and some landscape appropriate to that. And access for maintenance would be from the west side and then into the space, but we do also anticipate a fence being constructed for safety of the children at this point where my cursor is. The northern part of the building, the petals, if you will, so each one of these areas that I'm circling with the hand is considered to be a petal. And they're designed to be flexible such that the students and the teachers have access to the resources that they need in the moment. So we've taken our classrooms, and you'll see as we get further into the presentation how those spaces work collaboratively together. There are also in the paler yellow, you'll see some small group space and some additional pull-out instruction space. This green space is the maker space, and then the purple space in between on the first floor is a studio space, and the second floor is a dramatic play area for things like kitchens and those sorts of things for the students to utilize. On the first floor, there is a sensory room with exterior access, so we envision this as a key card entry point for shared utilization without disruption to the academic day. After school, of course, this would also function. Now, we see that there is very close proximity to the library parking lot for access to this should outside agencies utilize this space as well. The last thing that I'll note before we go upstairs to the second floor plan is that the area in red is the administrative suite. It also doubles as our storm shelter. So when we're building a school, the ICC 500, which is a code, mandates that we provide tornado shelters for the school. So in other words, all of the occupants of the school can shelter in place in that red zone, what's shown in red on plan, with a separate mechanical system and affordances for food and amenities to support that population in the event of a storm, as well as sheltering in place for a given period of time after the storm passes. So the structure will be independent as well, such that the rest of the facility in theory could be damaged around it, and the structure would remain in place. So it will have a concrete roof. It will have thick concrete walls, such that it would withstand an object being blown into the building, such as a 2x4 or other projectile. And keep everyone, the occupancy of the addition itself, safe and sound for that duration. Upstairs, you'll see a very similar arrangement to downstairs. The color coding for the petals and the spaces in between is similar. The only difference on the second floor is where my cursor is, and it says staff collaboration. So this is a conference space for staff to collaborate outside of their classrooms should it be necessary, adjacent to the dramatic play space. Now, this is the main circulating staircase in the building. It goes down into the multipurpose area. We have two mechanical mezzanines shown in gray. The first one here in the storm shelter, dedicated for that system, and the second one here on the west edge of the multipurpose room above the kitchen area that we had shown on the first floor. There are two twin egress stairs, east and west, that connect multiple classrooms such that students could safely exit the building in the event of an emergency, as well as doors downstairs to facilitate their egress in a similar manner. That's a tour of the inside. Are there any questions about the floor plan arrangement or the site plan arrangement at this time?
Any questions? Commissioner Kessler.
Well, they may be addressed as we go a little further. So the staff and everyone is entering in that area between the gym and the school. That's all the kids, staff, everyone is coming into the building from that location?
That's a great question. So as site circulation is being contemplated, and perhaps I'll just rewind a few slides here. We have a few different entry points into the addition itself. When I was speaking about the security of the entrance, I was primarily speaking about during school hours when visitors or folks from the community would be approaching the facility. For the students themselves, we see a few different opportunities for that to occur. Depending upon how pickup and drop-off is facilitated, not only do they have the opportunity to enter through these doors here as I described, there are also entry doors into the multipurpose space. There are entry doors, which we had seen into the classrooms themselves through the egress stair. Now, it would be uncharacteristic to put a whole bunch of students going through the classrooms at that time of day, but certainly the second entry point into the multipurpose room could be utilized on the west side of the facility. We had spoken about the possibility of drop-off occurring for buses in this vicinity, such that students could, on a nice weather day, go this way. We'd be interested in having a conversation about, on an inclement weather day, perhaps staging in the gymnasium space, the new gymnasium space, as an intermediate space to get them closer to the car, if you will. Well, little legs travel slowly. And so if that's a discussion topic, we'd be happy to have that as well.
We are presently talking to the library about the south parking lot, the new south parking lot, about some spaces there. So we anticipate our staff parking at the library south parking and coming in from this way, and then students coming in from the other direction.
Because it just,
Nick or Jason, just so, I don't want to, but if you guys talk, could you get closer to the mic
Oh,
too
yes, I'm
as you
sorry.
talk, Nick? Jason's good, but I know you were kicking back, so he's having a little trouble
Sure.
picking it up, Nick.
Want me to repeat that?
No, we got it.
All right.
Just want to make
Yeah.
the point, yeah.
because it just seemed, it seems like you walk into this hallway and then you have to make a decision and then you have to go through some doors before you're even greeted, or there's a control desk for the people walking into the building. Am I reading that right? So they're coming in one set of doors to get into the hallway, and then they make a right-hand turn to get through another set of doors, and then the reception area, is that open or is that like a door? I guess I don't know how schools are designed, but isn't there usually somebody monitoring who's coming in and out and having it open? It seems like there's just a lot of closed walls and no one greeting or no one watching who's coming in.
It's a great question. So when the students come prior to the bell ringing, the first bell ringing, entry into the building is facilitated through direct supervision of teachers and administrators coming in. So the doors would be propped open, in other words, such that the first set of double doors and then this other set of double doors would be available for the students to just simply walk right in. So they'll be on hold open devices that would be connected to the fire alarm system for health, life, safety reasons, but for all intents and purposes, they would simply walk through two openings. Once the first bell rings and we're in a secure situation for the students in the facility, that's when the multiple levels of security come into play for visitors or parents or whomever who might be entering the building, who need to present identification to the reception. We didn't want to, because we're sharing this link to your facility, we didn't want to have, we could have facilitated it with one less set of doors, but recognizing the opportunity for after-school sharing and those sorts of things, we thought that the extra set of door would provide security for both facilities, depending upon the time of day and who might be utilizing it. But it would be possible to activate those doors electronically from a single point in the reception desk such that they could be opened or closed in a locked position.
Our current schools, when you come in, you kind of come into a vestibule. You come through the outside doors, and then you have to be buzzed in to the second set of doors, and then somebody in the reception greets you, checks your ID, and lets you in as appropriate. And so it'd be a similar process here, that somebody would come to the doors, be buzzed in, they'd be greeted, IDs are checked, and then they progress into the building as they need.
So the first set of doors, that hallway area, will be locked?
Can be locked.
So which way are they getting buzzed through all of those doors?
It's a good question because it's a choice. So such that you could create the security at this level, at the exterior wall line, if you will. Or if the park district wanted to facilitate these doors being open and access to the gymnasium through this, then this door would be the secure entry. Such that the buzzer location in the camera from the reception would be able to either have this door as the primary lock position or this door as the primary lock position. Does that make sense?
Can do either one, the other one's open, so you can
Yeah,
either lock down here.
Right. I guess my concern is how we're locking our gym and how all that is gonna be if,
We're gonna want that. Basically, you're saying that the outdoor doors are preferable unless the park district wants access to the gym, in which case you'll move it back one level to that second door.
Correct. And you'd be able to control that
right,
electronically.
and
as the
I guess we
situation
would
moves.
not want people entering
Right.
from that location because we have our control desk and we want people to come in through this way,
Right.
Correct.
so.
Yeah, we won't have any of our staff during the school day walking through the gymnasium and then into the building. So if our staff, or if we have a program or anybody that needs to get access to the building, we're gonna have them walk outside and go through the main entrance of the building and not cut through the gym, if you will, to get access in. It's just not, you know, same approach in the evening if we have a program going on in the facility as well. I think just, that's,
Choices of which doors you want to be able to be locked at which time, and it's monitored through a camera or for a person, depending on which doors you're using.
Yeah, I guess I would want it to be locked, but then again, I would hate for people to stand outside in bad weather waiting to get buzzed in, or is that what they do
That's
in
what
the
do
schools?
right now, and it's
They
pretty
do
quick.
that
You
in
walk up, you press the button, we look at it and see, oh, it's Jeff Ruger, we let him in.
As long as there's no overhang to keep them out of rain and stuff.
Okay.
and there's a nice canopy exterior
Right.
for that entrance to
Yeah.
keep people dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
If I could just interject, I would
Yep.
suggest if you're concerned, you could have another set of doors towards the gym side that had security. So whatever the school did, those outside doors could be open to that interior link so they could get out of the weather and then go into the school and still be kept from entering into the gymnasium.
Well, ours would have is that part of this plan, or is that our plan, or how does that work?
Not part of our plan.
Okay, so we would want our doors, I think that's an excellent,
Do you have a preference which doors you lock?
Well, if the exterior doors are locked, then we would simply eliminate this interior set of doors.
Yep.
So we could facilitate that happening. If there needs to be flexibility, then we would keep this interior set.
and what about our
Okay.
gymnasium?
So your gymnasium doors are
Just introduce
egress
ours
doors,
So people know who he is.
and we
on
can
camera,
electrify
not just
those
the
with a
guy.
key card system as well, and simply retrofit the hardware to utilize the doors you already have.
So if somebody comes in, if they don't turn right to go in our building, they turn left, we can control the access into the gym that
Right.
they can't get in there. Like, we would control that access, that somebody couldn't try to sneak in and go through your building. They have
Correct.
to come into our building.
Or unless they key into our building through whatever system it is.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Shall we continue to the exterior?
Please.
So, fitting into the neighborhood is an important thing. Obviously, there is architectural precedent at this facility with the split-face masonry units. They're in a module reminiscent of a brick unit, but they're not a clay masonry product, they're a concrete product. You have clay brick banding, a dark brown clay brick banding that occurs, and you can see that photographed in a number of ways along the top. So here's that clay brick and the split face, and then likewise on the gymnasium edition, you can see that split face block and banding as well. There's a close-up of the, I guess it'd be the west side of the facility, where the signage is, and then some of the gable patterns with the square windows. We also went ahead, because of the close proximity to the other facilities, and photographed those for reference as well. So some of the formwork of the library, as well as the neighborhood context across Aspen and some of the townhouses, row houses, Middle School South itself, Victory. We have a lot of masonry products in close proximity, so that seemed like a very obvious match for this facility. We also have on the library some stonework, which we've chosen not to bring to the addition because we felt it was foreign to the Sullivan Center, even though it was in close proximity. But there was some metal panel colors, as well as some wood-like finishes on a rain screen system for the library that, as we approached the north facade of the addition, we felt it would be appropriate to start to incorporate some of those materials. And the closer that we got to the existing Sullivan Center, maintaining an opportunity to keep that aesthetic, if you will, with the split face block and the brick masonry. So this aerial perspective is on the east side of your facility. So the main entrance is here. We all parked in this lot here today. You can see how the addition sits north of the existing building in that covered entry that we just spoke of. with the sidewalk curling around the existing building, and then the paving continuing around towards the remaining trees of the wetland. This building is clad in brown brick to match the brown brick bands that you have on your facility. And then on the end of this, you'll see as we go forward in the slideshow presentation, you'll see how this is a square brown metal panel to mimic the square windows that you have on your facility. And we've done them in 2 tones such that we can create a similar stepped aesthetic as you do to your window pattern. As we rotate around the side of the building, the east side of the building, you'll start to see some of the additional materials brought in from the library. I mentioned that warm wood look material, as well as the predominant material remaining the same color split face block and brick banding that you have on the existing Sullivan Center. So on this facade of the admin space is that brown brick, and there's that metal panel. We'll see that again as we move around the building. This is a view just off of your main entry drive. If you had made the turn northbound onto Aspen and you looked out your passenger window, this is what you would see. So you'd see the addition here on the north, the existing building in the foreground, supported by this dark metal panel in the back. So what that really does for us is it pushes the aesthetic of the existing building to the forefront and makes the addition be the background context architecturally. This is the view across the street from the pickup and drop off at the Middle School South facility. So you can see again we have a banding. The dark brown banding correlates to the banding on your existing building and then wraps around the existing building. Now this is also a dark brick expression on the staircase, and then in the window pattern we've also mimicked that heavy banding pattern such that we can tie in with the existing architecture. This view is taken from the library parking lot immediately to the northwest of the facility. So you can see the brick banding. This darker, thicker brick banding here correlates to the heavy band underneath the soffit line of the facade that's immediately outside of where we're seated tonight. And then these bands align directly with those same bands vertically on the existing building and on the addition. Now, in between the windows and above this line, we have maintained the banding, but we have graduated the spacing such that the higher we get on the building, the farther the bands are apart from one another. And that helps with the sense of the scale of the building. I mentioned earlier the space between the proposed addition and the existing facility would be an opportunity to have a play space outside of the multi-purpose room. So that's what you see depicted in this picture. So this is the link that joins the 2 facilities. So this is the existing exit out of your new gymnasium. This is the main entry, and then where those folks would go into the addition. And then this is a window and large window natural light access from the south, so we get lots of natural light into the multi-purpose room, and then doors to facilitate students going in and out for play. Some interior views as well. We wanted to characterize what the interior is proposed to look like, and so you'll see on the plan diagrams on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see this green triangle representing a viewpoint, so it's such that the viewer of this image to the left would be standing in this position and looking that way, and so this represents their field of view. So you can see how that correlates. This is the maker space, the first space as you walk inside of the pedal. The next one is taken inside of the small group space. We have included folding glass operable partitions to provide both communication of natural light and fluid movement of students and teachers throughout the academic day between the spatial resources. So we have small group spaces, we have classroom spaces, we have pull-out spaces, and maker spaces. It's sort of a diverse palette of opportunity for the students. I'll progress to the next slide. So this top one is taken inside of one of the classrooms, and you get a view of what that is. The student cubbies are behind these marker board cabinets. So the way that these work is the marker boards slide vertically behind one another, such that you could have an entire writable marker board surface, or expose the cabinets as they are in this image. And below, where it's currently blocked by the marker board, are the cubbies for the classrooms. So the students would bring in their backpacks and their coats and materials directly into the classroom and pack them away in the cubbies, and then the teaching surface, that marker board surface, then glides over the top.
So excuse me, the marker boards go vertically?
They do. They nest behind each other and they slide up and down.
Okay.
So this is a custom piece of cabinetry that we've designed to maximize the writing surface in the space, as well as provide the students an opportunity to keep their belongings in their home classroom rather than somewhere else in the facility. So we think it's a maintenance saver, and we think it's an opportunity for students, especially little ones, not to lose things as they go from place to place. So those are our interior images. So we went through the exterior and the interior. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have on either one of those categories.
Jason, I know we talked a little bit about potentially surface in that play area. Any more thought on that in terms of just degree of maintenance? I mean, if you're thinking natural turf, I can just share with you, it's gonna be pretty challenging for your maintenance staff to get in there with a mower and cut it, and, so just kind of throwing that out. I mean, as you see out here, we did this synthetic turf on our preschool area, and it really, the price was not bad. And actually, they have play surfaces now with synthetic turf, so you don't have to bring in mulch. Poured in place is very expensive, so you could, consider doing a synthetic turf throughout. Now, some of your fall zones are gonna require a little more depth to it, but just a thought.
Yeah, we appreciate the suggestion. We haven't decided what that might be yet. I think we're still entertaining different options. I think a preference might be poured in place, but as you mentioned, it can be cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I don't know, what does that run, James, square foot typically?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can tell you at our recent playground we did, I think that was a little over $200,000. And I would tell you,
That's a big
your
number.
space
It's bigger.
is probably a little bit larger in terms of square footage of what we did out there. So, just a
Some of
thought.
this is driven by budget, but
Where,
we're looking at all different options.
where,
here.
yeah, synthetic turf might, with this kind of space, might be in more like the $40,000 to $50,000 range. And it'll last you for 20 years.
Yeah, the other advantage is synthetic turf's gonna heat up very quickly, so it's gonna melt the snow in the winter.
Just more for your kids to play when it's a decent day. They can run outside and still
Sure.
enjoy it, where natural turf, you're gonna have snow, and so just a thought,
I'd like to introduce Tom Lalonde. Tom is the Park District architect who's helping us through the coordination here. Tom, I'd like to get your opinion.
Well, if we're talking about the exterior of the building, we looked at it today, and quite frankly, I think it's a very successful solution to, some complexities that exist not only in the architecture between the surrounding buildings and obviously your building, but also the site. The site constraints and how the building has to fit in that space. Obviously, wanted to create an identity for the school, and I think they've done that nicely. This elevation is, I think, very well done with the proportions and the scale and just the breaking up of that mass. Height-wise, I'm guessing it's about the height of the gymnasium.
How tall is the gymnasium?
I don't know, is it 38 maybe?
I think it's 28.
No, I think it's more than that, because,
Yeah, because when you add it's probably
yeah,
30.
28 to the beam, is
so
it?
probably in the 30-foot.
Yeah, we're very close to that. We anticipate the potential of a rooftop mechanical unit, and we wanted to screen that, so we have a tall parapet The roof level is lower than that, but we have a
Yeah, I
tall
saw that,
parapet
yeah.
extending to screen those units from view.
There are some challenges with the site, and I think, maybe, I heard that there's some additional information available, maybe related to the geometrics on the site and how circulation is gonna work with dropping off kids in the parking. I mean, you got a pinch point there. So that's a real challenge, and, it's difficult. The entry's pulled back from the parking, so you've already suggested that, is there something you could do to get the kids into the building more quickly in inclement weather? I think that makes sense. That's probably a challenge for you to think about how that would work logistically within your building. But, I mean, overall, I think that it's a great effort here to fit a building of this size within the space that was available. I find it interesting that there's quite a departure from the, what I'll call the multipurpose admin component architecturally, and obviously that was intentional to, create that separation and identity for that space. I guess I'd want to see a little more detail on that, so that we could see how that architecturally would fit with the balance of the two buildings, because it is quite a departure. And that's
I'm sorry,
something, that's
can you
something that,
clarify
pardon?
What are you referring to?
If you
Which
go
area?
back, Jason, a couple slides, and just, that large brown form, which is basically the admin and multipurpose, where the kids are gonna initially come into the
Right.
building. Architecturally, it's a departure from the surrounding architecture.
Right.
So it's a little more of a contemporary look. It's got the sweeping roof form that you don't see anywhere else. And it's got this kind of, what I'll call one large mass with the use of the same materials around
Yeah,
the
there's nothing
exterior.
breaking up the visual.
Right, not like you do on this building, where you have the banding and what's proposing on the classroom portion. In and of itself, that's not a bad thing. I think it's just you have to decide, is that something that you're willing to accept?
Yeah, the
I personally
reality
don't have
It's not, the reality is it's tucked in there so that even though a
Yeah.
large area is a different colorship, for lack of a better word, most of it isn't gonna be visible from any ground position anyway, right? I know. They always hear me anyway, though.
Well, just saying.
Okay.
What is the reason for the slope of the rooftop?
Well, we needed to gain height in the multipurpose room, and then again for the mechanical mezzanine in the storm shelter area, such that we didn't want to build another big tall box next to the existing gymnasium. And so by varying the form of the roof, we've been able to create some movement in the massing, such that your eye moves along the mass rather than is sort of visually affronted by another big block wall. And changing the materiality of it and the coloration of it, making it darker, was intentional. As I mentioned, let's see if I can go around again. So you can see perhaps best in this view how that dark mass sits behind the corner of the existing building, and intentionally so as a dark color to push forward the view of the existing Sullivan Center rather than compete with it. And so you can see the roof line is quite apparent. The warm color of the windows, the aluminum color of the windows is quite apparent. And this is sort of designed to be the backdrop for that. So we haven't put windows in that wall. We've just left it as a patterned metal, dark metal panel wall.
So it's a metal versus, it's not the same brick, it's not the brick, it is,
Yes, so these end caps, the one on the east and then the other on the opposite side, are a metal pattern. They're 2-foot squares, which approximates your window pattern behind you. And so we've mimicked that in metal. Whereas the main mass here, the inset that you see is dark brown brick.
I mean, in reality, like I said, it's all tucked in. I mean, unless you're gonna literally walk around the building, it's not gonna be, most of it's not visible from Aspen. A lot of it isn't visible from the parking lot of the entryway to this building. Some of it will be visible from the library, but again, it won't be, you know, the one wall is all they'll see, so
And it's nestled in
I
the
get it.
the trees, the remaining trees on site as well. So it does, if you're at ground level and the sidewalk at the end of your parking lot, your existing parking lot, you do see it peeking out, and you get to see that sweeping roof form, and it draws those students in.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kessler.
The access road, that you're gonna use to get to the kitchen, does it go that far? I thought it ended, could we go back to that view?
Yeah, let's go around. Maybe we should go to the floor plan, or the site plan. There we go.
So it's gonna have to come in between those two buildings to get to the kitchen area?
Yeah.
So it's gonna,
That extension is gonna be added
So we'll have a sidewalk that connects.
is that a sidewalk
That's a
or just
sidewalk.
driving?
That's not driving. So we anticipate that the vehicles would stop at the current extent of your service drive and then turn around and go back out. So it's a small truck that comes with carts. And those carts are offloaded and then they're wheeled into the building. It's done that way at Elementary South as an example today. So the van comes in, it wheels it across the sidewalk, up the curb, and then into the building.
Okay, I guess I thought it needed to get all the way to that door, so it doesn't need to get to the door, it can just wheel from there. Okay, and I assume that the times that they need to come and use that access road will not interfere with anything that we're doing. We're not just
No,
raising the
no.
question.
I
Yeah.
can't think of a time where I've driven by there where there's actually
A
been a
back-
vehicle
a
in
backup
that
of the access
driveway,
road.
ever.
Hey, we're just sharing it, want to make sure we're all sharing that.
Yeah, I'm sure at
You
one
know,
point, you
garbage,
know.
garbage trucks back in
Yeah.
there and delivery trucks that come
Oh, what
back.
about
And
what about their garbage?
our garbage doesn't change. It's still,
No, where's their location? Do they have
It would be,
dumpsters?
we
or-
envision the same location, presuming that you wouldn't want garbage to come through the main parking lot. We'd like to utilize your facilities in a co-location as best we can, such that I envision a dumpster location shared next to your dumpster location.
get a lot of them so we can use it too.
Any questions?
So we also have
school's
the-
happy,
the
I'm
traffic. He's got 3 more slides too to present traffic.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
Which
where all
is
my
another-
question,
yeah.
my question lies not only with traffic, but
So do
my,
you wanna,
why don't we get to the end and then we'll go.
Well, this concludes the building component, so if you're ready to go to traffic and some of those conversations, then we
Let's
can
get to
certainly do
that. We may come back to this.
Okay. James, let me know if I'm doing this correctly.
Yeah, no, just go to the, first A, B, or C, that one's
Do you have to double click?
Yeah.
Okay. And then,
There you go.
which do I choose?
One
Full
more, two
screen
more
mode,
down.
I
hard
think.
copies,
Full,
anybody?
full screen mode, okay.
I printed them out if you guys wanna look at hard copies of A, B, and C.
So the district has hired Dewalt Hamilton
There's
to.
3 of A,
Wait,
3 of
bring it
B,
back,
so,
bring it back.
yeah, pick one and, or. It's the same thing you're gonna see in front of you on your screen.
Share one. I got a two, I'm on a two.
So we're looking at option A right now.
Here's 1, 2, 3.
We have an A, B, and C. Okay.
I'm just saying, this is, because he only had 3 copies.
Do you have all?
We're good.
Okay, so, the entry into the facilities is, still be working out on some of the details, go to some, starting off with trying to get some shared spaces with the library for our staff to have up at that end. Working with the park district with some parking down near our building, potential parent drop-off. You see cars coming in, dropping off. We anticipate a fairly early start for this building. Working with the village, trying to get some other access into the facility that has not been confirmed just of yet. So one of the options is looking at an easement coming off of Atrium Drive And that's what this indicates, a cul-de-sac or a circle, where we'd have buses come in off of Atrium Drive, come up into the cul-de-sac, drop the students off, and then go back out in that direction. Working with the village as they're trying to help work through that potential in that situation. It could potentially be that the parents use the cul-de-sac and would have the buses come up and drop off in the parking lot and go out in that direction too. You know, we're anticipating 7, 8 buses. We don't really know how many cars will be dropping off. We're trying to get a head count on how many cars right now. If you go out and look at any of our buildings, looks like we got a lot of folks driving in, roughly maybe 10%. So in this situation, a building of 400, there might be 40 cars coming to drop students off. The board has not made decisions on start time or transportation, but I anticipate looking at making recommendations that might provide transportation to all of the students as their kindergartners. We're right now between 1.5 miles, we don't for the other buildings. It'd be difficult for them to walk, and so it forces folks to drive. So we're looking at potentially making that recommendation. The start time, I'm looking at potentially right now, working out details, it would be an early start instead of later since they're younger ones. So this is one of the samples of something we've been working on and trying to get close. And the idea is to try to get minimal road space for costs and just keeping green spaces and maximum access to the entry on this situation. Let's see if we can see B. Some of these details, like I said, we're trying to work through with the village on.
We don't want to interrupt the library's pristine.
B indicates a similar plan, again, either cars or buses coming into the Sullivan parking lot. This is indicating cars. And then in that parking lot and off of Atrium, having the buses come in, stage there, unload, and then there would be a walkway path up to the entrance of the building. It's not that far. Sometimes these diagrams make them look like the walk's much farther than it is. And if you've ever gone to Town Line Dual Language and you see where we drop our buses off, they got to trek all the way across the playground. So it's about that distance or even a little less in many cases. So in this situation, again, trying to work with the village to arrange for buses to come in and off of there. In conversations with the village at this point, seems like they would prefer traffic to be coming in and off of Atrium Drive as opposed to Aspen, trying to keep some of the traffic off of Aspen Drive. And this one is similar to the cul-de-sac, but it's just a walking path instead of putting the circle in. And then we'll look at C.
How many buses do you anticipate?
7 to 8, we think will be in that situation. They're carry about 60 students. And so
So you think that the owner of the property just to the east is gonna want buses in their parking lot?
we're working through the village on that right now, so they're in.
No, I understand, but I mean, it's a private property, you know what I mean? It's private property. I mean, the village can, I don't know, it's an interesting,
The property's for sale. I don't want to talk too many details because
No, I
I think
get
you're
it.
reaching out, right, but that's been a conversation for, since the start of this, and the village has asked to take the lead on talking about that potential. This is C. What's nice about C is you have the circle or the cul-de-sac, and also then a connection to the Sullivan Center parking lot as well. So it gives you a connection all the way around. Excuse me. And in this situation, a similar traffic pattern. I believe those are buses that come in on the circle and would drop off. Cars would be able to come and drop off and go out Atrium Drive, depending on the direction you wanted the
So you've
traffic.
got buses and cars commingling.
We potentially would in this situation. We do right now over to Aspen as well for drop off and pickup. To get the cars off of Aspen Drive, we've changed our pattern, but through timing and separation.
so I thought originally when we talked about this, the north end of the building was gonna be utilized for some sort of driveway access, and it doesn't look like anything at all is coming from that direction. Am I seeing this right?
Are you referring to a potential road along the north edge of the?
Yes, right.
The village, and feel free to jump in too, Jason, anytime, but the village has asked for that to be available for a road to come in and then come down and either connect through the Sullivan or connect through the Atrium Drive. Again, waiting for some confirmation from the village on.
But, and I guess, just as opposed to using either our parking lot or the property owner to the east parking lot, it just seems like it would make more sense. And even if we decided, okay, let's use the parking lot of the park district to turn around and have them come back out that way, as opposed to just wrapping around the north end of that building, I don't understand why that isn't an option.
The village wants us to go, I think, in the conversations, the village prefers us to go out the atrium, get everything off of Aspen if possible and into the.
Well, I
atrium
understand
direction.
that, and you could do that, you could utilize that by wrapping around from the north and northeast side, and you'd be able to still do that. Either in off of Aspen and out on Atrium, or in on Atrium and out on Aspen, or even if it was a turnaround of some sort. I just.
They've asked for that location to be left open, but that hasn't seemed to be a preference for them due to the traffic staging of the number of exits or entrance onto Aspen off of that side of the road, if I recall.
Yeah, originally, from early conversations with the village, they spoke of aligning the entrance with the middle south pickup and drop off lane, which you see on the edge of the
No, I
screen
get it,
here.
I know, and I think there was some problems with,
Well, it would need to meet a threshold for signalization.
yeah.
And in order to do that, you would have to exit traffic onto Aspen Drive instead of accept traffic from Aspen Drive, if that makes sense. And then the village is concerned about having to widen Aspen Drive to facilitate that occurrence.
Do you see, Jeff, do you see problems with that kind of, those numbers of cars in our parking lot, several times a day?
Well, I think initially in the morning, no, because nothing's happening here until 9 a.m.,
Gotcha.
truly.
Afternoon.
So, Nick and I have talked many times about, the start time of the kindergarten is well within our issue of getting cars through Sullivan's lot at that time of the day. Now, 2:15 in the afternoon, that might be another story. On most days here, at that time of the day, it's pretty quiet.
It's just that I've been around a while, and I know what it's like on Aspen from,
Well, I think.
I don't know the exact time, from 2-something till 3-something. There's cars lined up
And I think,
at middle, at south, at,
I don't want to speak for, Nick, but I will. And I think the essence of what they're trying to do here, and ultimately that'll be up to the school board, is just with start times and finish times and trying to make sure that that all is factored into the existing traffic that comes down.
no, I get it.
Aspen.
No, my point
And
is
so-
more from a standpoint of I know how many cars it'll be.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily mean that it'll conflict with what's already there. Just that I know what kind of numbers, and especially at this age group, I can envision half the parents dropping off or picking up, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's a lot of cars.
One of the
And
things-
they don't just come if it's at noon, they don't come at noon, they start coming at 11:30 to be the first in line.
Be all day.
We anticipate, we've had some success, like with Aspen Elementary. We've actually gotten the cars off of Aspen Drive through a change in our traffic pattern. And the board has not made any decisions, but the actual start and end times for this building and the entire district will have to be reevaluated. So what you might see right now for middle school may not actually be the times that are occurring. So everything's gonna have to be staggered.
And again, I'm not saying this will
No, right,
conflict. My point is only the numbers, not
Right,
the
sure,
times
yeah,
conflicting or anything
Right.
else. I just know that there's gonna be a lot of cars
Right.
sitting there for a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
And if that becomes an issue because patrons of the Sullivan Center have issues getting out. I mean, you know, obviously you're gonna have to do something to make sure you line them up in such a way that if I wanna get out of my parking place, cause I was in there and now you're behind me, I can't get out.
Right.
So, I don't know, you know, how that
Well-
works.
Yeah, I think if you're in line, I mean, you see here how the line kind of wraps around, you know, the road out here. I think you'll start seeing people just pull into a parking stall and park and get out and walk their son or daughter into the building if they don't want to wait in line.
But again, now I come and I want to use the Sullivan Center and there's 15 cars parked down all the way to Aspen waiting to go. Now, do I pull in behind them? Do I try and get around them? Is that dangerous that I'm trying to go the opposite way of traffic?
We,
You know,
we would see too that one of the thoughts of this is if we had a situation where we had large numbers and they were like staging, queuing up into that entrance there, we're looking at, we'd bring people in, they'd come in and turn down into the aquatic parking
Right.
area and come around. The line would go, you would have to go down this way to come back around to go up, just to stay as
I
far
get you.
away. Yeah, so that,
as
since
long
our,
as that's you know,
that would be a requirement.
Is there any consideration, Nick, that you've had discussion with just everybody gets bused?
We're looking to make the recommendation that everybody would have the availability to bus, but I don't know.
You ain't busting little Billy. I'm driving him. You're not gonna tell me I can't.
oh yeah.
And the worst part is, at that age, mom's gonna sit there and wait till little
Well,
Billy gets in the door.
and that's one of my concerns is where the entrance is. That's one of the ones I've been sitting on. I'm gonna drop off and then I'm gonna stay there until little Billy walks through, and apologize for little Billy, I don't mean it, but, you know, little Davy. I'm gonna wait till they disappear out of sight. So is there any talk about moving the initial door up farther so that the kids are out of sight quicker within the school? But it will speed up how quickly mom and or dad and or nanny and or whoever else, grandma, grandpa, speeds away because they've crossed that threshold, they're in the school, they're safe, I can drive away.
We've done a pretty good job on our door service, as I call it, for our elementaries. We have staff out there that receive the students out of the cars,
Okay.
and then they wave the cars on. So we keep them moving pretty quickly in those. So if we continue with the practice that we've done, I think your initial year, your first year and the first week of the first year is gonna be a little, everybody's ooh-ah over it, but our staff does a pretty good job of greeting the kids, getting them out of the car and in the building, and forcing mom and dad to move along before the kid even gets in the door. So if a kid drops off at Aspen or South, the car is already moving and left before the kid gets to the door at Aspen or South, and that's a very short walk. We force the traffic to continue moving. So I would anticipate we'd continue the same practice, and we'll be getting that. And again, most of the kids that get dropped off, I think, are younger, and especially when it comes in inclement weather. So I think it's a pretty good model of what we have working. Bless you.
Thank you.
Pretty good model of what we have working. Even in Townline's got that little postage stamp of a parking space. Same thing. When they open the door and let them off, we wave them on and move them along. So it's a pretty consistent movement. So I don't know that would be as significant. I would agree with the assumption, but I don't know if it'll be as significant off of the practice we have.
I think maybe in the morning, the drop-off, you can move a little quicker, but in the afternoons, you don't, the kids coming out are not coming out in the same order that the cars are
Right,
sitting there.
exactly, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Now, we call them at Elementary South, we stage them in the gym, and then we have walkie-talkies, and we go, hey, Sally's here, bring her out, and so they're just not all standing out there. We'll probably similar practice, the same thing at Aspen, because it's visually, they can see them there, but we try to move them along there. But yeah, I would think so, but again, that's why we wanna bring the cars down into the aquatic center parking and then bring them up as they come.
Right, and based on, I'm looking at, I think it's drawing number 1, the way you have the cars coming in, going up, I'm gonna say that's the second row,
Yep.
and then coming around, and then I guess they're turning around and coming out the first row. I think it'd be better if you brought them in all the way to the third row.
Yeah, I think that's it.
At least bring them in one more farther.
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
then if we do have people that are coming to use the facility, they could take the quick left and park.
Right, and I'm concerned
Get
too
into the
about
building.
what you mentioned a minute ago about parking and just deciding they're gonna park in the lot and walk over. Now maybe, and who knows, maybe we're exaggerating how many people would do that, but again, you know, if you have a fair number of people start, you know, one sees them do it and then they all start doing it, do we need to then somehow cordon off an area of parking so
Yeah,
that
we
the
talked
facility
about,
users
we
can?
talked about that, Mike, James and I with Jason and Nick last week about that third row of the parking lot, the one that parallels the skate park. Like somehow really identifying that as this is the lane that's dedicated for parents at 73. So if cars are hugging the skate park to stay in line, there's a row of parking stalls just to the west of that where if parents decided to pull in and park, that would still be available to them.
Okay.
And as long as we left the first and second tiers of the lot open at, 2:30 in the afternoon,
Figure it out.
we should be okay. All of our employees are gonna park in the Family Aquatic Center lot. So all the full-time employees in the building will be required to do that and leave, obviously, room up in the front of the building for our customers.
And we've talked about visually, of course, with your permission, but painting portions of the parking lot a blue that would indicate this is the school's location and trying to keep, and we right now, like when we changed the pattern for Aspen, I was actually amazed at how fast people caught on to it. We put staff out there and we do it for a couple of weeks and then they go, all right, we got the new pattern. We did do the same thing with this every beginning of the year.
That's really all I would ask,
Yeah.
is, you know what I mean? As long as you
We're-
guys are cooperating
Yeah.
and
You gotta come
getting
down
it
to
wor-
Aquatic, you gotta go around, and we just train people, this is the way you have to do it, and if you have to come in and park, you're still gonna have to go around this way and then find a parking space that's allotted for us to use.
You know, I'd just rather not it end up being a problem for the park district, and then park district staff's out there, and we're utilizing time and labor for things that, so that our usage is improved, and it's a detriment because of the school, you know what I
We'd be
mean?
using ours and partnering.
Not that I don't
with
wanna
you.
work with you guys, but,
Yeah. We'd be
Okay.
partnering with you, and then Jeff would let me know if there were issues that have come, let's say comes November, and we see people kind of cheating, would have folks out there, my maintenance folks, and we'd say, no, you gotta, go in this way.
So what happens if the whole, the private
Yeah.
road access
yeah.
doesn't come to fruition? And now we have buses and cars coming in the same way. Do you envision, it just looks like a mess, to be
Yeah,
honest
well,
with you.
I envision still coming in and going through the Aquatic, but one of the lanes of the Aquatic, we would stage the buses, and so when all the buses have arrived, we would stop the traffic and have the buses go up to pick up and go out, and then we'd let the cars go. So we would stagger that. You don't want your buses intermixed with your cars and lining up, but what we do is through radio traffic and work, all right, we've got all 8 buses, stop the traffic, the buses would go in, pick up the kids, they would exit, and then the parents would have to wait. in
Because I
line.
know, even just on Aspen in the morning, you already have that situation.
Right.
You have the buses and the cars intermixed, and
Right,
the poor bus driver, he's sitting there just
Yeah,
waiting
yeah.
and waiting and waiting, because he needs 2 cars to move so he can get in the driveway to go.
Right, yeah, yeah. But in this situation, there's a little more room in that Aquatic spot, that a lane could be identified to line the buses up. And then when they're all there, they move and the cars hold. It's not ideal, we would prefer another option, but that's how we would handle it at this point, we'd do
There-
something.
And here, you should be able to answer that question, maybe. Whose parking lot is that? Just south of the senior center?
That's the same.
That's the senior center
That's
parking lot?
senior center
And then
parking
this
lot.
is obviously.
And underneath that parking lot is a huge retention area.
Okay.
And
That-
we've,
I mean-
we've been told that the senior center egress or easement through there into is not available.
Right.
That's what I was curious, okay.
Because that was an initial, that would be a beautiful location, straight down and go, but we've been told that that's not available. So there were conversations of Phillips Road and a road coming down. I think that's still somewhat on the table potentially for the village, but we're waiting for their lead.
Yeah, might be tough.
But we would be working very closely to make sure that our operations would.
So I guess the question I have, the village, has the village seen your, the building proposal and the footprint? Okay, so,
Multiple times, yeah.
I think it's fair to say you're going out Atrium Drive and not back onto Aspen. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's what everybody wants to have
I
happen,
think
but
there's a lot of options on the table, Dave.
I know, but
You
I
know,
can't imagine the
and
village
so-
willing to put more traffic onto Aspen. I don't care what time of day, how you want to stagger it. I will be shocked if that's a viable alternative versus going out Atrium or going out to Phillip.
What's really interesting when we analyze it for total, if you say about 10% of our population is being driven to school, we're only bringing 170 students from the north side to the south side, so it'd only be 17 cars.
But
Yeah,
I know.
you can't make that because you can't say the same number of eighth graders being driven is the same number as first graders being driven.
Right. No, I know,
So,
but, you know,
there's,
I'm looking
you may
at
have
the
10% in total, but the reality is the vast majority of that 10% is kindergarten, first, second grader versus sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. That,
And I'm just estimating off of the middle, elementary. I'm not looking at the middle school
Okay.
traffic. I'm just looking at the elementary
it's-
traffic.
it's-
But ultimately, everybody wants as much traffic off of Aspen Drive as all possible. So
Yeah.
I think people are gonna be working to try to help make that occur. The drawback for that, for parents that may have kids in 2 or 3 schools is, I come in, I come off, I gotta go to Atrium, I gotta go all the way back around and come on to Aspen. That car is still gonna be on Aspen Drive. It's just for this particular building, if one of
Right.
these works, it's off for that period.
I'll let you handle those phone calls. I guess my personal request, and, you know, we'll talk about this consensus as a board, I'd prefer to use the aquatic center from the beginning. Come in, make the hard right, and just get people into that pattern rather than, well, depending on where we're at, I'd like to have the entrance drive to the Sullivan Center and that first and second row, ideally second row clear for Park District, no matter what time. If we need to stage buses there, then use the second lane as a bus, but I'd personally like to come in off of Aspen, come down the entry, take a right, go to the end of the aquatic, go to that third lane, and then go all the way down and just get parents into the habit of that.
That will be the pattern.
That's
that's-
my
that's easily
preference.
done.
I'd like to make sure that that road, the entrance drive, and that first row especially, get clear
Quickly.
and, and stay clear. So that we don't get the conflict of, I'm trying to get to the Park District, I'm waiting in line, do I go around? Now you got a safety issue because I'm not waiting in line for parents, and, you know, we will have those parents that will get in line to pick up their child. After they circle around and drop them off, they'll just go get back to the line and get there to be the first one to pick them up in the afternoon.
I don't have a guess, and Jeff might have some information off of your enrollment. I don't have a guess of how many of our students will stay for an after-school care situation. I don't know how many of the kindergartners do currently, but
You have about 55 kindergartners currently in our program.
yeah. So I don't know if that'll go up when they're all in one location in such a low, I don't know how many of them have a after-school care situation, so I'd try to get a count, but that may have some play for folks of the convenience that, you know, they'll walk over and.
Yeah.
I
It's
It's
also,
still, but,
we anticipate that, you know, if you have a kindergartner and you have a second grader, you know, now you gotta pick up your son or daughter here, and then you've gotta go to, you know, elementary north to get your other son or daughter, so that becomes a little bit of a, just, you know, an issue. So, I mean, those are things that, you know, we gotta maybe talk about, you know, with a parent. Maybe they have somebody else pick them up. Maybe if it's 8 or 10 kids that have another sibling, maybe we take a van and we take them over, you know, and we get them so that mom or dad can pick them all up at one location. I mean, those are just logistical things, but we fully expect that with the 55 kids, that we think the number will go up,
oh, I would think so.
you know, with having it, that parents might feel better about not putting their 5-year-old in with 10 and 11-year-olds, that from a safety and just in numbers and being with the same age group, that could go up.
No, So we can work on some numbers, just see what we think the estimate at the end of the day might look like. But in, ultimately, in your idea of, you're coming in, you take a hard right, you work your way through the aquatic center, that is the plan, that's what we will do, and stay as far over to the parking spaces as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's it, you know, because most parents are coming in that 5:30 hour to pick up their son or daughter from the after-school program, and so that becomes an issue, because we do get a little bit busier, but if we're, say, in the gymnasium, and we're checking kids out, so then maybe we just work something where they can pull up, check their son or daughter out, sign them out, and be on their way. Yeah.
You mentioned at one point we were talking about reserving some spots at the Sullivan Center for your staff. Now you're saying they're all gonna go in the library south lot?
We're asking the library if they'll allow us, provide us some spots.
Okay, so we'll still need some available.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, we're
that's fine.
still gonna need some spots, for our.
And that's part of our IGA with the school district.
absolutely.
We-
I know-
You know, we just, we didn't say quantity, we just
No,
said that that's part of the agreement. We will provide space, you know, parking spaces.
We'll
and
do what
then-
they need.
Yeah, we'll make
That's-
it happen.
And we appreciate the partnership on that. That south parking lot is an excellent location to help alleviate some of that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's not busy at certain times that we'd think we would, you know, if we're starting it early, and it's before the library's open, and then we're done by 2:30, somewhere around those times.
Yeah, 11
Before they really
acres,
are
we can sell
moving.
them, and they can build a nice parking lot there for everybody.
Skate park.
Staying. Yeah, Nick and I talked, they don't need the space, and the village is not interested in helping us relocate it to the VHAC, so basically it's gonna stay where it is.
So if, according to the options then, if you're talking about bringing it down the third lane, it would have to be the C option, so they can go out through Atrium. The other two options would require them to loop back around, causing more congestion.
Not in the morning. The morning
No,
isn't a
but-
problem,
but
truly.
That's morning, but you still have the afternoon,
Well,
and
that's,
so that would, you have to look at both of them, correct? And so that would cause some problem or a lot of congestion if it had a loop back around.
to me, if the pickup point is still in that third lane as you kinda come around and you pick up, then once they get the kid in the car and they just pull around the front of the building, there is not an issue. It's, you know, just don't stop.
Yeah,
Just keep going.
The
you
key
know?
is to keep the parents to the third lane.
Yeah.
If we have to duplicate, then we use the buses in the second lane, excuse me, on the aquatic side. Stage them, that way they're separate. Parents are still going around the outside, buses are staged, they call them up, cut the parents off, you go fill the buses and go. Because once you've got your child in the car, they're pulling out. It's not like there's gonna be a backlog trying to get out. I'm envisioning whatever time it is, there's probably gonna be a right turn only onto Aspen, just to get people out, so you don't have the people trying to make the left. It'll be go out, make a right. Again, Nick has to deal with the calls of I'm trying to get to Hawthorne South, Elementary South, and now I gotta go 14 miles out of my way to get there, and that's
Same thing, we do the same thing over at Elementary North, Middle North. Certain times of the day, you can only turn right.
exactly.
There you go.
Get them out, get them on the road,
get 'em out
and
on the
you
road.
figure out how you need to get where you're going.
So,
15 cars.
Everything, so the campus is a nice option for school, but the problem with a campus option like this is that 2 times a day you have a large congestion of traffic. Rest of the day, you're doing all right, but there are 2 times in the beginning and the end, so people just have to be patient with the rules that you gotta, like at Elementary North and Middle North, you have to turn right. If you gotta go back around, you just gotta go around the block, but it's, you know.
Yeah, and I want to cooperate with you. I want you to understand that, but at the same time, I'd rather figure it out here on paper than go, oh, man, you know?
Yeah.
If only we had thought of this sooner, you know?
Yeah. No, and we appreciate that, and that's why we think the staging through the aquatic center works fine, because it doesn't interfere with any of your aquatic programming because of the school year.
so I'm just gonna, overall, I think the look of the design, everything, I think you did a great job of matching it. For me, I'm pleased with that. It just seems like the entrance point is just so tucked in, like my first view was that little hallway, and they have to walk around the building to
Can
get
we go back to
into it. And so,
Please.
okay, we're going someplace else?
No, we're going back to,
Just
go
to
to the
go
left
back to
slide.
a
There you
different
go.
slide.
going back to the slide, so we can.
Yeah.
Pretty hard for me to read that far, I apologize. Okay, is
So,
this what you were looking for?
yeah, so,
Can you zoom in,
it just seems like it is
zoom? Hard to
an
zoom.
odd entrance point to me. And I kind of, when Mike was talking about
You can.
buses being able to come on the north end and maybe go through that way, that just wasn't an option. We couldn't make that happen, or that,
Include this here.
that just doesn't make sense for you guys to have it come down north and have it like an entrance, maybe more towards the future addition or on the side.
Here's an option where.
Again, I'm not an architect, I haven't spent hours, and I don't mean to, I'm just raising a general concern is, was there any other option to put the entrance? Which then would give an easier maybe bus flow or anything like that?
It's a little bit of a complicated question because there are trade-offs at every turn, so to speak, no pun intended, with where the location of that is. We needed to provide a physical connection to the existing gymnasium to ease access. Once we made that connection on the south side of the building, creating another connection on the east side became a little bit complicated because of the layout of the administration suite. We would essentially have to take folks all the way from one end of the administrative suite into the other to get to the multipurpose room, and a heavy congested period of time that would be complicated. We also don't necessarily want folks having access to walk through the admin suite from a security perspective, from a privacy perspective, those kinds of things. So we'd like to get that entrance outside of that function. Similar to as it exists here at the Sullivan Center today, right? Folks can enter into a controlled location outside of the office areas or sensitive areas of the building. And so that link became sort of the obvious choice. Now, we had contemplated something to the north. The challenges with the north entry are queuing from Aspen Drive on either way, if that was indeed a roadway option. There would be some access from the south library lot, parking lot, for folks to walk across, but again, you would have them crossing traffic if the roadway was connected across the north to facilitate a drop-off in that sequence. The other complexity, when you have a main north entry point, and we live in Illinois, so we have a lot of winter months, maintaining a shaded north entry sequence is more intensive from a maintenance perspective, from a salt perspective. It can have some detriments to the long term or the longevity of that material, that concrete, because of the oversalting and things like that. So it just becomes a chronic issue. We like to keep the entries in this climate to the south side or the west side of the building to facilitate sun melt of snow in the inclement weather days, to maintain those naturally as best we can. So all of those factors, and then when you consider that we'd like the classroom addition to be in its position and align those three functions on one side of the building, if we were to flip that over and essentially invert the building, we wouldn't have an opportunity to create that additional cube because of the position of the existing Sullivan Center.
And the distance from that point to the entry, similar to looking at Town Line. I think it's a similar distance, if not even shorter. When we look at where we drop the buses off for Town Line, they gotta come across the parking, or the playgrounds. That's quite a bit of a distance.
Big difference dropping a bus off and dropping by car.
Right, but I'm saying
Bus
for
driver-
the distance to
What would happen if you took the orientation of the building from here and just rotated it whatever degrees just to get it closer to the parking lot? What's the negative?
Yeah,
Well,
but
if
that
our-
wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, if your
Get your-
rotation point
get
is
your
the
exit.
link, you're not gonna get the entry any closer by rotating it.
I mean, cause you're still, if you're gonna have this suite there,
Yeah,
rotating
but
isn't gonna
you
change
could
it.
build there are no windows on that side, correct?
On which side? The east side?
South side.
But I think the point is
Just
to,
to, windows into the admin space.
I'm assuming that you want, the whole point is to come in here, so you also have the multipurpose room as kind of a staging area
Correct.
before they go into their classroom, so any rotation wouldn't change that, you know what I mean? The configuration wouldn't change, it
But
wouldn't.
you could build a hallway, an outside hallway to they're in the building, but they're not into the admin space.
if you're dropping
that
off in
now.
the morning. be
You
it
know what I
car
mean, you
or
could do it the
bus,
way it is.
And you
If
have them
that's
come
what you're
in
talking
through the
about.
gym.
Yeah.
The gym's very close. So if we.
Yeah, but I'm watching James's face and I'm not even looking at him, and I can see him with, 400,000 kindergartners walking through with wet boots and him coming up saying, what were we thinking? Fair statement?
It has crossed my mind, yes.
You know, you can put all the mats you want down to follow, but little Billy or little Davey's gonna get off that mat and, you know, now he
Our
gotta,
students never, if we say stay on the mat, they are.
then they're better than I was, because I'd be the first one to step off the mat, which is why I used my own name.
Jason,
no,
what's
but I
the, do you have the length on your canopy and your entryway? What that is?
It extends out approximately 18 feet.
Okay. Do you remember what ours is out here, Tom?
I'm assuming.
Out front here at Sullivan?
This area.
No,
More than that?
5. No,
More than 18?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Maybe 15.
I'm just trying to get a visual of what we have here,
correct.
and, you know, if you get
Similar-
all the kids
similar
coming in
arrangement.
and, you know, it's raining out, do they all get under the canopy and, you know?
Is that a roofed element? Okay, because I saw a red trellis or something in the narrative.
Well, it's articulated. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there are some planters as you progress from east to west, signifying the different buildings in the district, such that these students, being kindergartners, are going to have an opportunity to touch multiple facilities before they go on to high school. And so we wanted them to start to get a greater sense of the
Progression.
Yeah, the progression through. So we've got some planters that signify that metaphorically, and a sort of a progression of the, there are 4 petals in this current building, so we also have 4 individual planters, one for each petal, so that the kids can plant things outside and get a feeling for nature and those sorts of things.
It also helps with cars pulling up, because trust me, with here, we had parents, until those 2 planter boxes are out there, they literally back their car up to the front entrance under the canopy to drop their son or daughter off because it was raining out. So we had to put a couple of large planter boxes and tell, you know, this is not an entry point for vehicles, so I like the idea.
Little Davey is not gonna get out in the rain.
Yeah.
I've had to actually tell a few parents in the last 6 years, you have to come to a complete stop before we'll let your child out of the car.
Yeah.
You know, they slow down real like drop and roll, but no, you know. So, you know,
All right.
Are there any other comments from the board? Tom?
I think, you know, obviously you've got some site logistics issues to work through, but generally
Yeah,
speaking, I
that's
think it's a
traffic.
good
We're
plan.
just looking if you guys are interested in approving, you know, advancing the design.
You know,
I think the
I'm
parking
sure there's
is
more
another
detailed
issue.
drawings
We're
available.
not asking you to vote on any of that tonight.
Conceptual drawings, these are
Just substantive
presentation level
design, we can
drawings.
get them to keep moving
So
they can-
if I could get a set of the conceptual plans, I would look at them in more detail. Things that I had included in my proposal was the, review the zoning study, review the building code study, review the mechanical and structural narratives, you know, just in a little more detail than what we're talking about tonight. So if I got those, then I would provide a written report back to you, but what I'm seeing here tonight looks very appropriate considering the constraints that they've had to work with.
All right, so given the fact of what we've seen, given the fact that we'd like to make sure the traffic stays off of the entryway, gets over to the 3rd lane, could I have a motion to accept the conceptual proposal on the Hawthorne School District 73 kindergarten facility?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion necessary?
Are we approving just the conceptual
we're just-
of the building or the traffic patterns as well?
Traffic pattern will ultimately be decided by the village, because they're the ones that are gonna determine what exit points, whether it's atrium, whether it's fill-up.
You're approving the design.
Okay, I'm good
Yeah.
with the design, I'm
Yeah,
approving that.
the logistics of it, how it happens, the village is gonna play a critical role in what are the access, or,
We might have to talk a little more depending, but
yeah, but conceptually on the design.
I'm good.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Meline?
yes,
Commissioner Baloo?
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
President Dorhofer?
Yes, motion is approved. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
so moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
Commissioner Baloo?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
President Dorhofer?
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much, we appreciate it.